Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Films. My name is Alan. Does art mimic reality, or is it the other way around? Recently on Facebook, one of you guys contacted me and asked me to do a breakdown of the Quinjet. The Quinjet is one of the primary fighters being used by S.H.I.E.L.D. in the Marvel franchise. It's definitely a very cool looking aircraft and something that is very futuristic, but just how well would it work in an actual combat scenario? Well, let's break it down. The Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division, otherwise known as S.H.I.E.L.D., was an American extra-governmental military counterterrorism and intelligence agency. It's really a mouthful, but their primary mission was to defend America and then eventually, as the agency grew, the rest of the planet. Founded in the wake of World War II, S.H.I.E.L.D. had access to some of the most advanced technology and advanced agents the world had ever seen. In 1945, following the battle in the Valkyrie, which led to the disappearance of Captain America, industrial tycoon and mad genius Howard Stark attempted to locate his good friend, but instead discovered the Tesseract. The Tesseract was a powerful crystalline cube that contained the Space Stone, one of those 6 very powerful Infinity Stones. Stark sought to recreate the Tesseract's power with his own prototype arc reactor design. Although he failed to do so because of technological limitations at the time, his son would carry on his work and use it to power the Iron Man suits. At the same time, Howard Stark also involved himself in Project Pegasus. This was a joint venture between NASA, the U.S. Air Force, and also S.H.I.E.L.D. Their primary mission was to further study the Tesseract and learn how to harness its energy. Project Pegasus would lead to the creation of the Quinjet, the precursor of the Quinjet. The Quinjet was a fixed-wing VTOL aircraft designed primarily for transportation purposes. It wasn't really a fighter and featured a 2-pilot cockpit, a cargo bay in the aft portion, and Gatling guns and missiles. After a Skrull mechanic took a look at the Quinjet, he was able to quickly upgrade it for space travel as well. As a result, the Quinjet was an atmospheric plane that was also capable of spaceflight. It was definitely ahead of its time and had a tremendous amount of thrust. The Quinjet would actually be built off the Quadjet design and would inherit a lot of its precursors' design features. Like the Quinjet would keep the former design's vertical takeoff and landing capabilities along with its larger cargo capacity. During the Chitauri invasion of Earth, the Quinjet would enter battle alongside the Avengers in an attempt to save New York City. After this revelation that humanity was no longer alone in the universe, S.H.I.E.L.D. began Project Insight in an attempt to rapidly increase humanity's ability to defend itself. This included upgrading the armaments on the Quinjet. The Quinjet is really an interesting blend of aircraft. Although at its heart it is a troop carrier, it definitely has a lot of fighter-like characteristics, and of course the VTOL capabilities allows it to be very flexible on where it takes off and lands. It's really a jack-of-all-trades type of aircraft. It also mirrors the transition that modern militaries are going through today. A quick look at the F-35 program shows us that some militaries are moving away from specialized airframes to hybrid aircraft that can be modified for a variety of different mission types. Now, of course, one of the largest issues with these hybrid-style platforms is they do have a lot of things crammed into the fuselage and airframe, which means they generally sacrifice some kind of speed and maneuverability for all those features. The Quinjet's name came from the 5 separate engines that control the craft in flight. This included 2 massive rotors housed in the wings to allow for vertical lift. The airframe was so strong that these VTOL engines could also be used to assist the Quinjet in more crazy aerial maneuvers like aerial thrust vectoring. Whether the people inside black out from the G-force is a whole nother issue. The Quinjet needs a lot of surface area to generate lift. The winglets on the craft are curved downwards to trap more air to generate lift. This is especially important when landing or taking off in VTOL mode. In certain environments, VTOL aircraft or helicopters can literally suck the air from underneath itself, which would decrease the air pressure and decrease lift, causing those aircraft to crash. That's actually what happened to one of the stealth Blackhawks used in Pakistan by SEAL Team 6 during the Osama raid. The large wings and curvature at the wing roots also generates more lift for slow speed maneuvering, but it does sacrifice some top speed because of this. Although I imagine the massive amount of thrust on the Quinjet will also allow it to push through turbulence and wind resistance. Now, the entire aircraft is not the most aerodynamic design, and it's actually quite bulky and thick, but when it comes to VTOLs, aerodynamics is not as important. Just take a look at a helicopter. It's basically fighting its way through the air the whole time. It's a flying brick. The Quinjet also features a dual cockpit. There's a position for a co-pilot or maybe a weapons officer on the side of the main pilot. There's also a large compartment in the back which can be used to store vehicles, troops, or anything else you want to carry. This, of course, greatly increases the size and weight of this aircraft. The folding wings on the Quinjet, which allows for more storage space when it lands, also increases the weight of the craft and further complicates the fueling system, electronics, and aerodynamics. The Quinjet was also pressurized, which means it was capable of space flight and also flying underwater, making it basically one of the most complicated and versatile and probably expensive aircraft that has ever been designed. Now, the Quinjet wasn't really designed for combat first, but it does have one very prominent weapon, which is a GAU-17 Gatling gun. This was a 6-barreled machine gun that could fire up to 6,000 rounds per minute. It utilized rifle rounds instead of some of the larger cannon rounds we would see in an upscaled version of this tech, like the A-10 Thunderbolt's behemoth 30mm Gatling gun. Still, the GAU-17 was quite impressive and successfully used on Army helicopters and fixed-wing ground support craft during the Vietnam War. Now, there is one reason this weapon was only used for ground support, and that was because it only had a range of around 1,000 yards. Today, aerial dogfights within line of sight rarely ever happen. The F-35, for instance, can engage multiple targets at the same time from more than 100 miles away. But the GAU-17 Gatling gun remains a terrific ground support weapon for slower-moving or VTOL-capable aircraft. But then again, when you have aliens riding hover sleds flying around New York City, the type of engagements you have will be different as well. So it could also be repurposed for dogfights, especially because the Gatling gun can fire off-bore. Now, at long ranges, the Quinjet uses a wide range of missiles. And post-Project Insight, the Quinjet was armed with even more missiles and additional 3 Gatling guns on the nose of the ship. This basically transforms the hybrid from a more harmless hybrid transport to a full-on assault gunship. The Avengers version of the Quinjet also featured advanced retro-reflective panel technology. This is the same technology that allows the helicarrier to disappear from sight. This type of stealth technology was a game changer during line-of-sight battles or stealthy insertion missions. While the Quinjet might struggle against a superhuman riding a Harley, it typically did its required job and did it quite well. The Quinjet's VTOL capability was basically the pinnacle of this technology, and not only was it extremely powerful, it was also very reliable, which is important. The Sea Harrier was one of the first VTOLs to see action in combat. During the Falkland Wars, the British Royal Navy lost 6 of these aircraft, 2 of them to enemy fire, but 4 of them were due to mechanical failures. VTOL aircraft are extremely difficult and complicated machines to build, and they especially run into issues when they're taking off and landing in hot environments. This is because hot air is less dense than cold air, and therefore a wing produces less lift in a hot environment. In some really hot areas of the world, like in Dubai for instance, planes can't even take off during the day because the air temperature is way too high. The Quinjet really begins to shine when the Avengers modify one and make it their own and turn it into kind of a flying mobile base. It really takes advantage of all of the positives with this design. It also allows the Flight Challenge members of the Avengers team to travel alongside everyone else and not have to be carried like a little baby. Given its versatility, the Avengers were able to use the craft in many creative ways. During the Battle of Sokovia, the Quinjet was even able to drop a ScarJo on an electric Harley out of the bomb bay. Look, I know Harley has a legacy and tradition to protect, and electric bikes are kind of stupid because they don't have shifters, but you know, I just want to see Harley survive. That's all. The Quinjet is also quite durable and combines the best of helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft when it comes to survivability. First, the Quinjet has 5 engines, which gives it a lot of redundancy and a lot of thrust. This means the airframe is also quite heavy and sturdy. Then we have the bulky nose and thick wings, which can take a lot of punishment and not deform during a crash landing. The Quinjet also has 2 massive turbofans in the wings that can generate lift using a technique known as auto-rotation. Even if your engine's cut off and your Quinjet is crashing, the downward motion will actually propel air through those turbofans, which will generate lift. That's how helicopters crash land, by the way, when their engine's cut, and if you want to get a helicopter license, you're going to have to learn how to auto-rotate, which is absolutely terrifying. It's such a terrifying maneuver that the US Army actually has its own medal for pilots that successfully auto-rotate during an emergency landing. It's called the Broken Wings Award. Now, thankfully, the Quinjet does have wings and can glide somewhat when it's lacking power. That combined with auto-rotation does give the pilot some amount of control during an emergency landing. Ultimately, it's the cargo bay and the large size of the Quinjet which really delegates it to more of a transport role. In the Marvel Universe, S.H.I.E.L.D. still has access to the F-35 Lightning II, which is a much lighter single-engine 5th-generation fighter craft. These are cheaper than the Quinjet and could be used for interception and air-to-air combat. Ultimately, the Quinjet was a really cool design, and it's kind of perfect for a bunch of superhero friends who like flying around and saving the day. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about the Quinjet and its design. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, thanks for joining us today. My name is Alan, reminding you that life is a movie, and you are the protagonist.